Baylor on SI fans. How are we doing? It's your boy Josh Crawford. And guess what? We're back. We're back at the Baylor bye week. In Coach Aranda's time in Baylor bye weeks, they treated him relatively good. 4-1 in the five post bye games that he's had. But I don't think he's had a bye game this big in terms of being a pivotal moment in the season and just being a deeply embedded rivalry. We got, of course, the TCU Horned Frogs coming in the we got the TCU Horned Frogs on the schedule. The Bears will be traveling to Fort Worth to take on Josh Hoover and company. And because I'm a sicko, I guess, I wanted to get matched up with some of my folks over down there in Fort Worth that could give me just that little bit of a tush push of a contextual knowledge that I wouldn't have because I don't cover their beat. They cover their beat, so I'm gonna talk to them about it. You know, if I say we got some cooks in the kitchen. JD, Andress, and Nick Girimonte from TCU on that side. Guys, how are you doing? What's up with y'all? How y'all feeling about 40 hours until kickoff? How we feeling, guys?
Never been more nervous for a game in my life. That's about how I'm doing. There's
Wow.
a lot on the line in this game, and there's not a lot of good news coming out of the injury report for TCU, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I'm excited to be here, excited to talk ball. It's always a good day when you get to talk some football, especially a game as big as this one.
Come on, exactly. We'll get into some of your feelings, your misgiving feelings about the
Yeah.
said injury report, but also Josh feelings about coming off last week. But Nick, how are you feeling, brother?
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat as JD. This is a massive game, as we said, not necessarily for any probably Big 12 championship stuff, any big time stuff, but just for the state of I think both programs, as we talked about a little pre-show. It's a pretty pivotal point of the season. Both are 4-2, both are probably feel like they should be at a better point than they are. Both coaches kind of in an interesting spot right now. This is massive, and yeah, the TCU injury report is not exactly giving me a ton of hope. But it'll be an interesting one. Weather involved too. 11 a.m. start. There's a lot of weird stuff with this rivalry, and it is one of the best rivalries in the conference. So I'm excited but nervous, like JD said.
Okay, okay. I can trust me. There's no lack of nerves on this side out in Central Texas as well because it's we that in your response to my questions with the behind enemy lines segment. Y'all go check that out right now. We talked about just the similar composition of both of these teams, but before we get into this matchup in particular, just give me a little bit of context as a non-native Texas, somebody not born into this rivalry as a guy that's covered this team for some years and a guy that graduated from TCU, Nick. Just talk to me a little bit about the Blue Bonnet battle, how it's evolved as both teams have kind of navigated their way up, I would say, to the upper crust of the Big 12. And just what does this game mean on a regular basis, especially now, I would say, with the departure of the conference's biggest rivalry, obviously with OU and Texas?
Yeah, I think to start, it's not the Blue Bonnet battle. It's the rivalry, and I think, and I
Bars,
take that.
bars. Hey, that's the clip.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
there you go. There
I
you
like
go.
that. Okay.
Because this is a rivalry that's been around for one of the longest rivalries in college football. These are two schools in a similar spot. TCU started on Waco, both close to Texas, both, like I said, similar, like very, very similar, probably more than I want to admit. Yeah, one of the longest lasting rivalries, one of the only four protected rivalries in college football. I mean, right on only four protected rivalries in the Big 12. When you are in that close of proximity and you've been in a similar situation for so many years, it's going to drive up. And there's some argument as to who TC's biggest rival is. I would still say Baylor. Um, and then that just leads to that much fun. Like even the recent history too. Like you look at 4 years ago. So to give context, I really joined and was aware of how massive the TCU Baylor rivalry is. I'm from California. Went to TCU in 2021. That 2021 year, TCU was horrible, and we fired Gary Patterson, interim coach. First game, Chandler Morris goes off to kind of rob Baylor from a would-be playoff spot. My sophomore year, 2022, that was the bazooka field goal to walk it off and to really propel TCU into a playoff spot. And yeah, and then we flip-flopped the last 2 years. So it's It's just a fun rivalry, recent history, total history, and they're both in very, very similar situations where these head-to-head matchups matter in terms of context of how the Big 12 hierarchy is. I think both programs feel like they should be near the top, and this is one of those massive games, yes, for this season, but for total and how the Big 12 is viewed from a national standpoint.
JD, from your perspective, again, as somebody that hasn't tracked this rivalries a ton until I got to cover it. What you talked about 2021, Nick, obviously, a few around that time, 21, 22, both teams were doing better. Just be honest with you. What are some of the best moments of this rivalry? And you got certain rivalries where it's trying to think off the top of my head right now. Honestly, I'm blanking. But you have certain mismatch rivalries. I'm trying to whatever. But it definitely seems like this rivalry with just the total record. Like I think TCU is up. I think like 49 or 44. But also just the general median of both programs, a barely evenly yoked rivalry. So from y'all's perspective, for how have you TCU being within the DFW Metro, having some higher peaks more recently, making to the national championship game? Is there a sense that TCU may feel like they should have the upper hand in this rivalry, or maybe just a cut above Baylor in general in the newly revamped Big 12?
I don't know. I think when you look at both of these teams, it's a really weird situation, right? Where like if you're a Baylor fan and you talk about the DFW Metroplex, they've had the least amount of success out of all the DFW teams. SMU's made it to the playoffs last year, albeit they got embarrassed by Penn State, but they at least made it. They won the ACC, or I guess technically won the ACC. But TCU made the national championship, in 2022. Like Baylor is technically, by definition, had the least amount of success in the DFW area. So it's really weird when you talk about the DFW rivalry as a whole, because you can also make the argument it's TCU SMU. You can make the argument that it's SMU, Baylor. Like there's a lot going on in that sense. But like I think if you're TCU, you're looking at this year as like you should have had the upper hand. This should have been a potential loser gets knocked out of the Big 12 championship, not the loser might get their coach fired game. And I think that's kind of what you look at this as a disappointment in this sense is like, sure, if you're a Baylor or TCU fan, you're super excited for this game. Or if you're a college football sicko, you're super excited because God knows what's going to happen when Baylor and TCU play, as evidenced by the last 4 games in the rivalry. Like you have no idea what's going to happen. And I think that's what makes this game so much fun, especially from an outsider perspective. But I think like, truth be told, no one has an upper hand. No one's confident in their team to win. No one's confident in their team to play a full 4 quarters. And that's what makes rivalry games fun, right? Even if TCU was undefeated at this point, ranked number 18, or Baylor was, like neither team would still be like, yeah, we have the upper hand. Look at Baylor TCU 2021 when Baylor was highly ranked and TCU had the Chandler Morris legacy game, just dotting all over the field for 450 plus. Like this game isn't a who has the upper hand. This is a who's the home team because they have the upper hand kind of game. It's not like it really matters on skill level. It's not like it matters on coaching level. Like TCU, SMU, they wake up, they play each other in the iron skillet, and there's some bad blood during the game. TCU, Baylor have bad blood throughout the entire season. They're conference rivals. They're not just once a year rivals. They are rivals in every sport. TCU, SMU is a rivalry that's once a year. There is nothing that relates to anything like TCU and Baylor, and I think that's what makes this such a unique rivalry and what gives no team any upper hand in any sense.
I love that, JD, especially in the new era of college football we got where Michigan State is playing conference games at 2 o'clock in the morning in their time zone because they're playing USC. Oregon is in the Big Ten. Yes, it is nice to have some sense of just old college football traditionalism. So I think it's very well put. Off again a little bit of the rivalry, focusing in on this year. You mentioned in your article with me, but also in the intro, just a lack of confidence with your Horned Frogs going into this game. Baylor fans should have a little dose of that too. That was can't say it was up by double digits up until Avery Johnson decided to I would say do Avery Johnson things. But from y'all's perspective, I guess the one difference that Baylor fans can, I guess, will evaluate our K-State game versus y'all's K-State game is it seemed like Kent State had a decent hold on that game. They had to get Baylor too, honestly. But it seemed like they had a decent hold on that game throughout, honestly. Talking about, I think they were up 28-7, and then Just yeah, the offense just wasn't really able to put it together in the way they've been explosive early in the season. So obviously we got each team's most recent opponent. Why do you think that Kansas State game went the way it did for y'all, Nick? And what are some of the conclusions that you have about this team coming out of that game?
Yeah, the thing about the Kansas State game, this could be both a positive and a negative. They lost that game because of their own self-inflicted wounds. Like they lost that game, I think, more than K-State even won that game. They weren't able to stop on simple like third and shorts, and they had the lead, and it was tied when a fumble, backwards pass, drop came to a returning touchdown that was really a fluke play that was should have never happened. You can blame that on play calling, whatever. Then next thing you know, a pick six were just confusion. Um, just a lot of bad penalties, self-inflicted wounds, giving them extra downs. So that's bad. You got to get that cleaned up and all that kind of stuff. Play calling needs to be better. Hoover needs to be better. A lot of the stuff needs to be better. The good thing is you can fix that. That wasn't anything that you felt overwhelmed talent-wise. Um, the running game actually got going for the first time since their season opener. So you can take stuff from that game. The problem is you need to fix it. Like if this problem stays put, then you're not going to win a shootout with Baylor having self-inflicted wounds like pick sixes, fumble return for touchdowns, stupid penalties, abandoning the run when you shouldn't, questionable play calling. It's a lot of that. And yeah, TCU definitely has the talent to be able to pull out the win. Their offensive line injuries, as we'll probably get into on the injury report, scares me because that's probably the weakest part of their offense, and it's probably their two best O linemen that are hurt. So that's TBD, but yeah, you could simplify everything. Hoover, when he's right in his time, is one of the best quarterbacks there is in the conference, and along with Sawyer, that's why I think the over in this game or the over under this game is so high. Um, and Eric McAllister, like if you simplify everything, I could easily see TCU pulling out the win, but um, the play of the past three games doesn't give me the confidence that they will do so.
Okay. JD, as we talked about to like a certain extent in the article, there has been some misgivings about Sonny Dykes' role in some of the just the disappointment, up to the point in this season, yeah, just two conference losses already, not even halfway through the season. You talk about like procedural penalties, Nick. I think a big thing that's frustrated Baylor fans about Dave Aranda's time here, even with a conference championship appearance, is you are a defensive guy. You've been a defensive guy. You're this quirky, weird guy, but you know how to recruit defensive players, but also you were the mastermind behind some really good defenses, and yet you have not had a good defense in your 6 years here. So, what are some of the things that TCU fans are laying at the feet of Sonny Dykes in terms of like these are things that you're responsible for, and these are more like systematic embedded issues with this team that may not be able to be overcome? Or what are some of the things that kind of Nick referenced, like, hey, you know, these things may be more personnel related. These things need to be cleaned up, and but there's only so much more time we have to clean them up on the field.
When you look at Sonny Dykes led teams at TCU, the biggest difference between everything is a home and away split. And Nick and I have referenced it a lot. TCU at home is a completely different animal than they are on the road. Since Sonny Dykes took over, and not counting the 2022 season, because God knows that looks like a fluke with every year that's passing, they've been 6-8 and been outscored 444 to 407. They provide more penalties on the road than they do at home. Like it's just your typical stuff you see, but how TCU does it on the road is they come out flat. Coming out at home, they're a way different animal. There's still a little bit of procedural penalties. There are a little bit of mental lapses, but way less at home than there are on the road. And I think part of that is like it makes TCU so hard to judge, right? Like they had the UNC game at the beginning of the year that made them look really good. Very minimal penalties. They boat raced UNC, which looks like a worse win every week that passes, but it's still, if you're TCU, you're battling injuries, but at the end of the day, you still have Kavorian Barnes, you still have Eric McAllister, you still have Josh Hoover, you still have one of the best tight ends in the conference, and DJ Rogers. Like the weapons are there, and Baylor's defense is basically not there. Like you have everything kind of playing into your factor to just say, hey, offense versus offense, and I trust TCU's more just because against Kansas State, Baylor struggled in the first half. TCU was able to at least get something going, just shot themselves in the foot like they have been. I mean, I know we talked about in the behind enemy lines about Josh Hoover leading the conference in interceptions, but like if you look at his interceptions, there's maybe only two or three of them that are pure interceptions. Another one is like most of them are, two of them are drops off receivers' hands right into cornerbacks. Another one was a swing pass that ended up becoming a fumble. Another one was literally taken out of Eric Kallish's hands on a fade route. Like Hoover's not as bad as he has looked stats wise per interceptions. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, if not the country, same as Sawyer Robertson. Like this team has all the talent and they have the mental fortitude. They showed that in their comeback against Colorado. The problem is just like they can't perform on the road. And that's why it's like this game is like so interesting because rivalry game, your emotions are really amped up, or they should be, but like can TCU come out and actually look like they have a heartbeat the first three drives of the game? Or does it take until halftime when they're down by a touchdown to feel a sense of pride like they've had to lately?
Is that something that almost would kind of be like the book on Sonny Dykes coming over from SMU or even I guess from Cal? I don't particularly remember him being a slow starter at SMU, but I would not. That's not something I definitely would, especially year by year. That's a consistent thing that y'all observe. I wouldn't lay that to defeat of personnel. So is that something that may have been like a known commodity about him coming into this TCU job, or is that something that's really only arisen at his time in Fort Worth?
I'll kind of go lightly here and I'll let Nick take over. But like if you know Sonny and you've watched Sonny, Sonny's not a hands-on guy. He's not a raw pump you up guy. Sonny is a recruiter and a really good PR head coach, like really good PR head coach. Like got the family, got everything, says everything right. You want him to at a press conference. He recruits at an exceptional level. Like he does everything right on that part. But Sonny's not a hands-on, get in your face, yell at you, pump you up kind of guy. That's just never who he's been really. And I don't think it's a negative, right? But like, because every coach is different. But at the same time, if your teams are coming out flat, you gotta adjust in some way or form.
Mm. Nick, what say you?
Yeah, I think the funny thing about this season is that TCU's two losses hasn't even been slow starts. Like they were up 17 at Arizona State and blew it, and they were up 7-0 against K-State and blew it. Um, but yeah, there has been slow starts, and the slow start, like they were down 7-0 to North Carolina, and North Carolina's offense looked unbelievable for the first drive, and then you end up blowing them out, and then they were down 14-0 against Colorado. So like the slow starts have been wins, and then the fast starts, both of them have been losses. Like it's been funny that way. But yeah, I don't it's tough, and this has been a conversation with all of college football, is that with the new clock rules and everything, it limits the amount of possessions. So when you could have a slow start and recover because you know you'll get the ball back X amount of times, it adds more of a ability to come back in games and more leeway. You have to start off fast because you only have the ball for X amount of times. That's, I don't know, 8 times, whatever, per game. Like it's very difficult to do. Um, so yeah, I think that's going to be very important. I think that helps their play calling a lot too. And we've seen when TCU's gotten down and it seemed like they're starting to crumble late in games, that's where Hoover's been at his worst, where one thing bad happens and he'll crumble and become turnover prone when he's in control. Again, he's extremely, extremely talented. And then you can also just keep running the ball, which it seems like they may be able to have some success. The running game hasn't been good, but this matchup against Baylor's front, like Baylor hasn't been great at stopping the run, I believe.
You're right.
And with
You're
Kavorian Barnes
definitely
back,
right.
yeah, yeah, I was,
300 rushing
yeah,
yards against Auburn. You're definitely right.
yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting. And this game's gonna be a shootout. Like, let's be honest.
Oh,
Both defenses are not great. Both quarterbacks are amazing. Both playmakers are amazing. Like Cameron, Trigg, like these guys are amazing. And so it should be a fun game. The question is I don't know if TCU's offense is consistent enough right now to be able to compete with that. But the fact that they're at home, the fact that it's so urgent gives me more confidence. But then again, there's the factors of injuries on the line, and then the weather seems to be should be raining for the first hour of the game. I don't know if it'll be delayed or whatever, but that could be a factor as well.
okay. Okay. I guess I get to our last big ticket thing, at least that I got. I'm gonna get a little bit more in the weeds after this. Like we mentioned both guys multiple times. Sawyer Robertson, Josh Hoover, college football top two statistical passers in the country. I see a lot of similarities, honestly, a lot of guys that, I think would win with volume. I think Hoover has a stronger arm than Sawyer, undoubtedly. But in terms of, like I said, similarities, I see kind of, like I said, power conference quarterback that win with volume, and if they don't perform, the teams aren't going to win. But I see the divide in terms of like arm strength with Hoover, but also I guess I would go with decision making for Sawyer. So what has just been that variance for y'all for Josh Hoover this year and last year? Like I was guy that didn't have a ton of context coming into him this season. I was a little lower on him than a lot of people were in my preseason QB rankings because I just look and see double digit interceptions. But that UNC game, just based off like you said, the way the offense was rolling, but even some of these throws, I was like, oh, that's an NFL guy. Like that's an NFL guy that I was just missing. But obviously, it's been a little bit up and down. Um,
Yep.
so what has that variance been like for y'all riding that roller coaster? And what are some of the triggers that y'all see in terms of like, okay, this is going to be a good job game, or this is going to be a game that we might go Jay Cutler mode and might try to trust his arm too much and may try to fit something into some of these windows that are closed. You're muted, JD.
It's a weird time with Hoover because like he will make the greatest throw you've ever seen, just dropping it in a bucket out of nowhere and then sell it over someone by 5 feet. And part of the problem with Hoover is a lot of times you talked about the arm strength and all, how great his arm is, and he relies on it too much. He throws off his back foot. He doesn't step up into the pocket. He doesn't avoid anything. He just tries to throw one. And it's like, he's really good, really good. I still have him ranked over as the number one quarterback in the conference just based off what he can do. The problem with Hoover is just he has to play hero ball too much. Like TCU was averaging over 7 yards a rush with Gavorian Barnes last week on 12 rushing attempts, and they completely abandoned it even before the game got out of hand against Kansas State, asking him to throw the ball 38 plus times rather than using the running game that was working and use it as play action when Kansas State was running their safeties in and tight. Like they were just relying on the fact that they have a receiving core of probably the best trio receiving core in the Big 12 and just saying, all right, let's just throw Hoover out there, make him throw the ball 35 plus times. He's going to find one of them eventually. Well, K-State had a game plan for that and planned it really well. They covered all their, they were getting home with four. Like they were doing everything they could to prevent Josh Hoover from doing it. So I think when you look at the grand scheme of things with Hoover, it's like he's even better than what his stats say. Like he had a 60-yard touchdown pass get taken away from SMU. He had an interception get taken away. That was a 35-yard fade route in the end zone. Like he's even better than what his stats should say he is. I talked about it earlier with his interceptions not really being as bad as they look on paper because a lot of them have just been drops that turn into interceptions. The Hoover, there's not a Hoover roller coaster. There's a game plan roller coaster that ends up becoming a Hoover problem.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, I think
Okay.
JD took a lot of the words out of my mouth. It's unbelievably frustrating, at least from my perspective, because you see the ceiling, and we saw it against North Carolina. We've seen it in other big games where, again, the talent is there. Like he was in first round mock drafts after the SMU game. It's been awesome at times, but then again. when the running game hasn't consistently been there, I think this coaching staff is probably asking too much out of him. Maybe some more complicated, long developing plays than he's comfortable with. And you saw a lot of the turnover, like you mentioned, the interceptions last year. That was his first year fully starting, and you hope that a lot of them would be cleaned up. It's still frustrating. To JD's point, a lot of them aren't on him. There's been a lot of drops from this wide receiver core, which has been frustrating. But yeah, his floor hasn't gotten as high as maybe you would have wanted to at this stage of his starting career, which is frustrating because when he gets overwhelmed, when he feels like he has to play hero ball, he'll force holes in places where it doesn't have to be or stuff like that. And part of that's on him, part of that's probably on the staff for asking it out of him. But yeah, you just want to see more consistency at that higher floor because we've seen the high ceiling and it just hasn't been to that point that TCU fans would want to see. Because again, yeah, JD mentioned he has him number one in the conference. I think there's an argument when he's at his best for sure. And you definitely want to see that because he's what makes this offense go. But you don't want him to be the only thing that makes this offense go, and that's when he crumbles.
Mm. So I can relate a little bit because me personally, I'm not a super high fan, especially when we got a guy in Bryson Washington that's gonna clock that's 1,000-yard rusher as a freshman. I don't love Sawyer Robinson throwing the ball 35, 40, 45 times the way that Jake Spitball seems to like to do at best. But at the very least, I think that in hearing y'all talk, the big difference is Sawyer seems more well equipped to kind of handle that quantity in terms of decision making, but also the run game is much more accessible, an option, whether it's with Bryson Washington, whether it's with Caden Knight, a guy that offers a little bit more explosiveness, honestly, than Bryson Washington. And I mean, based on what y'all telling me, there's not that hesitancy to rely upon it when you need to in that same way. I'll just ask this, and I guess I'll get into the week.
I think part of that too, real quick. Part of that too is Spavital is understanding of knowing when, even if the Baylor defense has been struggling as much as they have, Spavital knows to just rely on the run, give the defense a break. Bryles is a great play caller, does really well at it, but his offense either is a thing of beauty or it's a 3-and-out that looks horrendous, and there's kind of no difference in it. And I think that's part of what allows Baylor to kind of seem more balanced than what TCU is. And I think part of what, like, if you took Sawyer and Josh Hoover and combined them, you'd have a better version of Justin Herbert, is what basically what it is. Like, they're two of the best in the country, but just in bearing different categories.
With a lot of overlap. Okay. So coming off the heels of that, JD, all this long discussion that we've had about both of the quarterbacks and just the embedded knowledge that we both have on our respective beats, who do we think has the advantage at quarterback in this game?
That's so tough. Just going based off what I've said, because it's a home game, Hoover at home doesn't perform badly. Like, he just doesn't do it. And we've seen Sawyer have his struggles the same way I've seen with Hoover. And I truth be told, I don't think neither team has a disadvantage. Both of these defenses are what they are at this point in the season, and I think both offenses are going to have a really nice stat line by the time this game is done.
Yeah, it's such a cop-out answer, but that's
Yeah.
the truth. Like they're both the strengths of their team. I mean, they're literally 1 and 2 in the nation passing yards. So if you want to give the nod to Sawyer, then I wouldn't be mad at you for that. Yeah, it's we saw them have a awesome duel last year in Waco where it came down to the last second field goal, and that was such fun quarterbacking to watch. Again, a lot of that was Washington kind of running over the TCU defense, but still, I mean Sawyer made a ton of plays and he's been unreal this season. So yeah, those are both the strength of their team, and I think it would be wrong to like favor one or the other to a greater amount than minuscule.
Okay, JD.
Who's your edge go to?
If I had to pick a quarterback and say, I need you to be productive today. I need you to go out and throw the ball as much as humanly possible. I'm taking Josh Hoover. I'm a guy that as a Jets fan right now, that is a sunken place. So just the arm talent, like I see a not so insignificant gap with Sawyer Robertson's arm talent and Josh Hoover's arm talent. But when I
Okay.
see just the decision making, talk about some of JD. I mean, talk about some of Josh's turnovers. I'll take point taken. The only thing I would say is like undoubtedly watching the UNC games, watching some of these games, in prep for this, just the fitting into the tight windows, the fitting into the tight windows, the over reliance on arm strength. That is where Sawyer, maybe because he doesn't have that quad forearm, he doesn't really get into. So if I had to go out and say I need as many passing yards as possible, give me Josh Hoover. If I were to say, hey, I need us to win this football game, give me Sawyer Robertson. So in that, I
Yeah,
measured this.
I think it's funny when you look at both quarterbacks, right? Like Josh Hoover, like if you told me I need a quarterback to go out there, just manage the game well, make the passes I need, you know, don't have any turnovers, just do everything good. That's all I need. Just do everything as well as you can. Sawyer Robertson is the guy you're taking. But if you got a 2 minute drill, no timeouts, you're taking Josh Hoover for the arm talent. And I think it's really weird because they're both still really good, but you want both of them for completely different scenarios.
I mean, just put it plainly, like I said, because I'm gonna try to stray out of this giving the lame answers. Josh Hoover's probably a more fun watch, but Sawyer Robinson's probably a more favorite of a coach, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I 100% agree. Yeah.
so talking about again, we both talked about some of the highs. Let's get to a little bit of the lows. Like we both mentioned, I said multiple times at this point, both defenses leave a lot to be desired. To put it lightly, I guess. But within that, we don't. I mean, it could. We've seen it in this rivalry before, where both teams put up plus 50 points. We don't expect it to be a situation where neither defense gets any stops. We don't expect both offenses to put up 100 points. I guess I would say. Within two very bad defenses, to put it plainly, where are some potential matchup advantages that y'all see on TCU side for Baylor? Tevin Williams, their starting corner, is more than likely not playing for this game. Kaden Jenkins was a freshman All-American in 2023 and really held up well against Jordan Tyson. That being said, don't know how I feel about him against Eric McAllister. But I will say a strength of this Baylor group, it was stronger before the year. A lot of injuries have dinged that, but I would still say between your edge rushers and Omarion Winston and Matthew Files White, do everything King Thomas, at the very least, what I have seen them do a decent job of, which is kind of sucks to kind of take this away. They don't turn 10-yard runs into 50-yard runs, 60-yard runs, hitting their head on the goalpost. They have a lot of guys that have the ability to run sideline to sideline, whether it's some of these transfers I mentioned, or a guy like Colin Reed that's kind of stepped up as a freshman. So within a bad TCU defense, where do you see some potential match, strengths for this TCU defense to where they could win against a Baylor offense that has a lot of pretty skill position guys, but an O line that has been exposed?
The TCU's okay. TCU's defense is bad, but TCU's first and second down defense is a completely different animal. They're one of the best in
Yeah.
the country at early downs.
And then the third down is one of the worst in the country.
TCU is 129th out of 133 FBS teams at opponent fourth down conversion at 77.78%. And it's not because they've only had three of a brand. It's because teams are playing four down territory at nearly once they get past their own 35, basically. Because TCU is so horrendous on third down and fourth down. And it's one of the most bewildering things in the world because there's no statistical and fundamental difference between first, second, third, and fourth down. If you just look at it plain on paper. So it's genuinely like it's mind-boggling why they struggle so much in the late downs. But I selfishly, I hope both defenses have really bad games because I find offensive games a lot more exciting between these two quarterbacks. So like, is there a bright spot on TCU's defense? Yeah, linebacker core, it's really good, but like, is that going to be enough to slow down Sawyer Robertson in the passing game or their Baylor run game? No, that's just how it is.
Yeah. And again, you look at
Straight
Baylor's
up.
skill positions, like nobody's going to be able to contain Trig. Like you probably have to put a linebacker on him, and that would probably be Caleb Alarm-Zor to throw out a name. But again, to ask anybody to cover Trig is tough test. Cameron, like TCU's corners are good, but there's no elite guy that you trust to lock someone down. I think the front could honestly be the most effective. The TCU has some good edge rushers that could take advantage of a Baylor line, and hopefully that's probably their best bet to slow down the passing game is just to get pressure and pressure, pressure. Because like Devin Deal to throw out a name, Zach Chapman, there's some good edges there, and that could get to the quarterback. But yeah, their playmakers definitely overwhelm TCU's secondary. TCU safeties, you may know the name Bud Clark. He's returning back, and he has very big playability. He's also gotten confused in coverage at times, and same with Jamel Johnson. Again, very good big playability and very good at times, but also a little bit inconsistent. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of ability on this defense. Another frustrating thing is that they've got big interceptions, they've made big plays, they've gotten pressure, and they've shown that they can be very effective. But the inconsistency, which shows up very much as we see the first and second down to third and fourth down differences, is frustrating. And yeah, really, like JD said, I think it's going to be a shootout.
Mm, okay, yeah. Bud Clark of 2022 college football pick six fame had a big one.
Yes.
Had a big one against
Yes.
UNC early in the year. He's definitely
Yeah.
on my key matchups list.
Yeah.
Coming out. But like I said, in pulling the curtain back guys, I try to keep a little bit of balance of Baylor offensive guy versus TCU defensive guy.
Yeah.
And honestly, I try to call myself a ball nerd, try to find more of
I
the opposing
appreciate
team
it.
matchups versus Baylor matchups because people that
Yeah.
read my work, they know all about our personnel.
Yeah.
Definitely was a struggle trying to find two TCU defensive guys that I was like, okay, these are the guys to watch out for. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
gave me a
Bud's the
day.
name because of his big playability. And then I'd say Caleb Alarmzor, the linebacker, has been playing the best out of any
Okay, Kevin
system.
Longshore versus Bryson Washington. Look at you, Nick, helping me write my last article. We love it.
There you
We
go.
love it. So like I said, talking about Baylor secondary was a question mark going into the year. Got exposed early in the year, to be honest with you. Auburn didn't even need to throw the ball that much, how much they ran it. Kevin Jennings literally was perfect in the first half against SMU. Really showed up in a big way against probably their toughest matchup with Arizona State and Jordan Tyson. I think Jordan Tyson had 6 for 42 with a touchdown, but that was on 14 targets, and you could almost see some visible frustration there. Again, Tevin Williams was there, but a guy that drew a lot of the one-on-one matchups, a guy that's primarily functions best as a press man corner is Caden Jenkins, the junior from Texas, who was a freshman All-American, had a dip in play last year, but seems to be returning to form this year, and is again undoubtedly Baylor's top corner. With that, again, Baylor secondary not good, but showed up very well in their toughest matchup of the season against Arizona State. How do you view? If I can get my words out, Eric McAllister's ability, especially coming off last year, being the two to Savion Williams, and from my perspective, stepping up in a big way to provide that same big playability, but also be a consistent one still. Do you view him as a guy as a true mismatch against his Baylor secondary, a guy that we could be looking at, 100, 150 plus, because he doesn't catch anything but first downs and touchdowns. We know that for sure.
Yeah. He's a big play guy. Yeah, I can go. I do. I'm respectfully, like I do think he's gonna go off. And this is because last game they didn't get him involved at all until pretty much garbage time. He's their best wide receiver, and in my opinion, I don't think it's close. And they're so much better when they get him involved. I think they're going to be frustrated with the fact that they didn't get him involved sooner in the game against Kansas State because they threw him two deep balls late and he took it for touchdowns and mossed a guy. So they should make an effort to get it to him more and kind of simplify the offense because I think that's again going to help him out. And I think Kansas State, like they better change the offense after Kansas State because of the pressure that seems like they're on in the season and what went wrong last week. So I think they're going to make it a statement to get him the ball early and often. and I do think he's going to have a big game. I'd probably bet him to have a big game as much as any other TCU player.
Mm, okay, okay. One thing that you mentioned, Nick, that was interesting to me, talking about getting into the trenches, where I used to love to have fun at. You mentioned two of TCU's offensive line starters out for this game, with the already pretty inconsistent.
Questionable.
Okay,
Questionable.
okay, okay.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Hurt nonetheless. Hurt
Yeah.
like undoubtedly banged up, especially at this
Yes.
point in the
Yes.
year. With a combined with a run game that's already been a little bit inconsistent. Baylor's run game been a little bit more consistent. So when we look at both teams' ability, varying ability to run the ball, how quickly do you think that Browns abandons the run game if it doesn't go his way? Considering with the O-line injuries and considering that this is a game that's going to be a shootout. And do you think that, yeah, like I said, let me know. I only got some. How soon do you think he abandons the run game if it's not going his way? And how much of a negative is that if we know 3 out of 4 downs, Joshua was throwing the ball?
Does Baylor get the kickoff? Because that might be when they abandon it. This is a little bit of a pride game too, if you look at it from Bryle's point of view, right? Like Hoover is his disciple, and Robertson is Aranda's disciple. I mean, even though he's not an offensive coach, like that's who he's kind of been with, developed. Like this is like whose kid is better in a rock fight kind of thing going on between them. And so I genuinely wouldn't be surprised. And it's one of those where you know your shortcomings as a team, right? You know how good this Baylor offense is. Like, why not just go straight for a shootout? Why not say, I know what your defense is, I know what my defense is, I know what our offenses are. Let's go toe to toe and blow to blow. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they just completely abandoned it from the start of the game. Like we know what these defenses are. I don't think there's anything. I mean, is it realistic? Probably not, because they want to establish a run in some way, shape, or form. But like, you want to establish a run against a defense that opens things up. Look at Baylor's defense. Look at TCU's defense. Everything's kind of open. You don't need to establish anything. Just kind of go for it.
Yes, keep it simple, stupid. I love it, JD. I love it, and that would be like you said. That would be a really good viewing experience. I'm a little biased. I like a little bit of defensive football as a former D lineman, but excitement wise, would be a great viewing experience.
This is a rivalry, and there's a good chance this game ends like 6-3. Like, we're talking all about offense, and this game just ends 6-3. No interceptions. Both defenses just having the games of their life. Like, what are we talking about?
Keen Thomas, 17 tackles, Davion Deal, 3.5 sacks, 4 TFLs. Yeah, because football is weird like that. So you're absolutely right. Going a little bit macro as we wind down, guys. Talking about what the rest of the season looks like for these programs. TCU undoubtedly has a much harder schedule down the road. Yeah, 2 ranked teams right now. Reigning conference championship of Pierre in Iowa State. And yeah, obviously got this game right here. I would definitely say that Baylor has an easier schedule. You got between this game. You got, like I said, this is kind of like I said, a toss-up game, a rivalry game, you throw down the records, whatever. But Cincinnati, which one of TCU's 2 ranked teams going down the wire, but don't know how I feel about them as a team. Second year, they beat Iowa State, but still second year in the conference, a little whatever. But outside of that, the only other game that where Baylor should not really feel confident going in is to get it at home at Utah. So what does TCU win mean for the program overall in this season? And what does a TCU loss mean for the program in the rest of the program and the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think it couldn't be more big. This is so the losses to Arizona State and Kansas State are both on the road. And both games where TCU was a slight favorite against Kansas State, but very minuscule, very toss up. If they lose to Baylor at home, and like you said, when you have at BYU left, you're hosting ranked Cincinnati, you're hosting Iowa State, and then you also have a road game at Houston that's looking tougher by the day, and West Virginia, like West Virginia obviously isn't good, but going there is never a guarantee. this is when you have to have. Again, there's been talks about getting rid of Dykes and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that happens unless he misses a bowl game, to be
Mhm.
quite honest. But again, this is Baylor is probably one of the maybe best teams, but in a rivalry game at home, this means more, right? Like you have to win this at home and you can't lose two straight to them because this is a direct competition, a direct rivalry that you want to be better than. So this is so important in terms of getting a good bowl game. I kind of look at it as a gateway game. If you lose this, it really feels like your season's going all the way bad. And then if you win it, you're looking at, okay, we're 5-2. Like we can make something out of this. We can put some wins together. They were at a point last season where they were 3-3, and it looked like the sky was falling down. And then you are able to turn your season around with a win at Utah and a win at Kansas and games like that to really flip your season. And I think this is an opportunity where it would be a massive morale boost again with the rivalry thing, with it being at home, that it could flip it for the better and it could flip for the worse because it's very emotional. If they lose this game, there's going to be a lot of interesting discourse, to say the least.
Mm. So, Nick, do you feel, and I thought this to you too, JD, you lose this game, you got two right now road, you got two ranked games left. You got again, you playing against a conference championship appearee as well. Do you think there's serious danger, at least whether you would look at, favorites underdog on the sports book, if you drop this game of not making a bowl game in Fort Worth?
I don't. You already have 4 wins. You still got Houston. You still got West Virginia. Like I like their odds to at least make a bowl game if you drop this one. I think the bigger question mark, like Nick hit on, is just like conversation really starts rolling, and I think the James Franklin firing does worse damage to reputation of college coaches around the country. Of I don't want to say mid programs, but like programs who aren't the Penn States of the world with the unlimited resources and the recruiting, like. If they're like, oh, well, they fired him after losing, 3 straight, and it's like, well, that's different. Like, they're a preseason number two. Like TCU was not a preseason number two team. And like Nick said, we're both not on the fire Sonny Dykes train. I mean, we're maybe on the something's got to change, but I don't think it's Sonny. And yeah, I don't think it's panic. I think there's panic if they lose to Baylor. I don't think it's oh my God, everyone has to go panic though.
Mm.
I think they're
Okay.
knowing TCU fans and knowing online discourse, which you can take as much if you want out of that, like who it doesn't really matter. But I do think it would be a long week heading into West Virginia. That's for sure.
Mm. No, like I said, the discourse after the Kansas State game is somebody just, as a companion, um,
Yeah.
as a companion conference mate. That was one of the first things that popped up after
Yeah. The
I saw a
message
lot of
board.
TCU, yeah, a lot of TCU stuff on my timeline. And I love you guys. I'm not even subscribed to. I'm not chronically on TCU football Twitter. So me seeing it
Yeah.
repeatedly after that K State loss, I knew it was.
Yeah.
I knew there was a few, maybe just a few panic buttons being pressed over there.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm winding this down. I really appreciate it. I'll keep it straight to the point. JD obviously already answered this question, so I'll throw it to you, Nick and JD, like so you can kind of restate, and I'll add on a twist. Give me y'all's game prediction for this matchup, and give me y'all's prediction for TCU's record the rest of the season.
Ooh, I didn't even think about record rest of the season. Um, this is probably biased. I'm gonna give a win. I believe I said 35-32 to TCU just because I think this means so much and especially even more at home. The offensive lineman thing will be interesting to watch as we get more injury reports in ahead of game time. But uh, and I picked that score of 35 because another thing to note here as we wind down, TCU doesn't have a kicker. Two of TCU's three kickers on the roster are hurt, and last game they really abandoned it. You'll see a lot of go for fourth downs. Nate McCashin is their kicker. He's a redshirt freshman walk-on. and he hasn't had success yet kicking the football. And Dykes has said in his pressers that it's a serious situation that they aren't confident in. So that's one thing to note. That's why I gave 35 a clean number there. So we could see when it comes to if it's a close game, which I think it will be, when it comes to late game management stuff. Don't be surprised if TCU goes for it more than you would think they would.
Okay, I got you. What you got for record for the last seven
Yeah, let me
games?
see here. I'll go
I got a tough ass schedule to finish the year.
yeah. I'll go 8-4.
Okay.
I feel like that's probably about right, which will add even more conversation to the ceiling of this team and all that kind of stuff. If you have repeat 8-4 regular seasons, which will be interesting. But that's what I think this football team is at about this point of the year. So I'm gonna go 8-4. I think losses at BYU maybe, and then you maybe split Houston, Cincy. That's probably a more optimistic side of things, but I do think it's very much achievable.
Mm, I think Baylor fans are looking at something very similar. Um,
What's your prediction?
for this game,
Yeah.
I went Baylor 38, TCU 35. Josh Hoover late game interception. Y'all are driving to win.
It
He
very well
throws
happen.
one, and we get it.
Story of the losses so far.
And the discourse starts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh God. My
Baylor
missus would
secondary
be
is so bad. They've
miserable.
been saved by a former walk on. Jacob Redden, he has two. He had a big pick against Kevin Jennings. Obviously, a big pick season against Avery Johnson. Um, just been a bend don't break secondary. And outside of the linebackers, Baylor's safety and nickel, I'll throw DJ Williams in there, has been the best part. So the corners aren't great, but the safeties are opportunistic. So I think Josh will give us at least one. In this scenario, it's at the end of the game.
Could very well happen. JD, what you got? I want to hear yours.
Going 7-5, and that's because I have Baylor winning this weekend. I got them winning 35, or 41-35 is my call. Yeah, I mean, and it's not because I have confidence in Baylor more than TCU, or I have less confidence in TCU than Baylor. It's just like I don't I don't know what to expect from this game. One team can win 45-0, the other team could be a overtime game, which an overtime Baylor TCU game would be elite. I feel like we never really get one.
It'd probably never end.
Yeah,
It would not be worthy. It would not be worthy of 11 a.m. start time. Which
yeah.
Yeah. Which is
I'm
also interesting.
as a Memphis guy, I'm currently battling with the fact that Memphis and USF should be facing off in a rank matchup next week, trying to campaign to get college game day down here,
Yeah.
and 11 a.m. start time does not help that.
I pray that students show up coming after a loss when it's rainy at 11 a.m. does not exactly bode well for the best atmosphere. To give TCU the benefit of the doubt, the students have been good so far this year, in terms of packing out the stadium, and it should be for a rivalry game. But that's another thing I worry about is that with the rain and the gloominess of the morning could come not exactly the highest of energy out the gates, which they probably need.
Well, if that's the case, then Baylor's guys will be used to that because the Baylor attendance at home games in general has been, put it simply, not good and been a point of contention amongst the fan base. Talking about these online discord that we get into. Nick, JD, that's all I got. I really appreciate y'all. It's always super fun when we get to chop it up, talk ball. Again, just kind of trade sauce a little bit and find out a little bit more about each other's team as ball knowers. I think we all would denote ourselves. You figure you have just a certain level of context, whether it's box score watching games and prep, but especially in this combo, we got each other on social. We'll follow up. I think I learned a lot more about just some of the nuances especially with Hoover and just some of the feelings that this team has and why. So yeah, guys, this has been another episode of Behind Enemy Lines podcast, a version with JD Andress, Nick Girimonte. your boy, Josh Crawford. Guys, obviously, game day coming up. We'll get out. I had a watch article for you all. We'll have some immediate takeaways. And of course, y'all go check out JD and Nick on their respective social media platforms and get a little perspective on your rival. It's the only way to do it. So,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
we have fun. Let's get it going. All right.